This is the Good Fire Podcast. Stories of Indigenous fire stewardship, cultural and social empowerment, and environmental integrity. Welcome back to Good Fire. This is season 3 upcoming. Amy and I still aren't entirely sure what we're going to do here, but we got some pretty good ideas, so we'll see how it turns out.
Yep.
Yeah, it's been a while. When did we record season 2? That was like 2 years ago now, right? That was a bit.
Oh, you know what? I don't even know. I think so, maybe. I think it was during COVID and all that.
That's right.
Like the year after, yeah.
Yeah, I can never keep track of these things. The years are all blended together. But yeah, we're back. So this is good. This is exciting. And it's going to be a new season. We wanted to record this kind of teaser episode just to keep everybody informed, let you know that there is more content coming. We're not really sure when. We haven't. This is all we've recorded, but it'll be coming. Give it.
Yeah, it'll come. It'll come when it's ready. That's the Indigenous way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
When it's the time.
Yeah. So yeah.
I do know one thing, though. I was going to say that I do want to focus the season, though, on matriarchs. I think that would be awesome. I attended the Indigenous Women's Treks event. So it's a prescribed fire training event in their territory in the States. And it was just so inspirational to see like those 30 women come together and, talk about their nations and the need for fire and how fire affects their communities in both good and bad ways. And so, yeah, after doing that, we were actually going to record some episodes there for Good Fire, like special episodes, but I just felt when I was there that it just wasn't the time to record anything, because obviously when we're recording, we're pulling people away from the group atmosphere and all of that. And so I just felt like, let's just wait and see what happens and get some funding for season 3 and really launch into some more in-depth episodes about it. And so I'm actually planning to go in a few weeks. They're doing their second Crook Women's Trek. So I'll be headed down there to help with that event.
That's awesome. That sounds really cool. Yeah, when you first put that past me, I was like, that sounds awesome. Like, why? Yeah, absolutely. Get those voices out there that maybe haven't a chance to be amplified. So that's perfect. I think it'll be exciting too. I'm going to get to take just the producing role on this one. You'll be hosting it on your own with somebody else, and that'll be fun.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I know you're a busy guy too, so it's been awesome to have had you on the last 2. But I think it will be nice for the matriarch season just to have some women voices at the table to talk about some of these things. Yeah, I've just heard so many incredible stories, and I think women have always kind of been the backbone in many ways around like Good Fire. I remember one elder told me, like, because in her community, like the men would always go out and burn, and so I would say, like, to her, like, well, it seems like men are doing like all the action with burning, and she'd be like, who do you think is telling them where to go and what to do? That was so good. So she said, like, the women, like the grandmothers in the community, decide, and they go out and tell the men and other folks like where needs to be burned and what. So anyways, it's really interesting, and hopefully we'll get into that a bit more.
That's very cool. They're the secret keepers. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I love it. No, I'm excited. I'm excited for this one. So I guess the point of this teaser episode, you wanted to kind of tease the matriarch season, which is forthcoming, working on it. It'll be ready when it's ready, like Amy says. Yeah. And then you wanted to give a bit of an update, right? We've had a hell of a fire season here in Canada this year. I think it's the most hectares burned on record, I believe, in Canada. On record, right? Meaning like, so the last, 70 years or something like that, 100 years. So there's obviously been a lot of impacts. A lot of things have happened. It seems to be that the communities and people that are affected the most are the people that live in the bush, the Indigenous folks and communities that are away from the big cities and that kind of thing. So go ahead. You wanted to give an impact. I think we should start with what happened in Canada fire-wise this year. Why was it so bad?
Yeah, so I think this year, we've just been on the go since May. So for those that don't know, like my role is usually as a research scientist with the Canadian Forest Service, but I have been on secondment, or like an interchange or a loan, fancy government term, to Parks Canada to work with their National Fire Management Division as a Indigenous fire specialist. And so what I've really seen is I've been a lot closer to the operations and just how it's impacting people. And I mean, last year was fairly quiet. I think that the Parks Canada teams responded more to like anthrax outbreaks and hurricanes than to wildfires. But this year has just been unprecedented, not only for Parks Canada, obviously, but across like Canada from coast to coast to coast. So, we had in Alberta here some very early spring fires in May. So lots of times we get that in Alberta when like the snow's melted, but it still hasn't been warm enough to green up. So the trees haven't leafed out, the grass hasn't grown in green. And it's a really high risk period if you get really warm, dry, windy weather. And that's what happened here. And so there were lots of different fires, communities evacuated. I remember I was driving home from the the female treks in Banff National Park, and I was driving home to my community in Rocky Mountain House, and I could see 3 massive smoke plumes, and like I've never seen that before from my community. And it's so, it was just busy everywhere. And so usually though, when that happens, we usually have that, and then like it rains and the rest of the summer is good, but this season hasn't shown that. And so I think, then we had big fire outbreaks. Obviously, like the Northwest Territories have been hit very hard this year. Northern Alberta, Yukon a little bit, British Columbia again, and then Quebec also had multiple evacuations. And so it's just been a year, like I'll say that. And so Canada's had to depend on a lot of help from other partner countries, Mexico, US, Australia. I think there were people here from Costa Rica, South Africa, all trying to help out with the fire situation. And so I've seen like the drain too on my colleagues because, it's one thing to be exported for like, so for people that don't know, like when you're going to an incident, usually the deployments are between like 14 and 21 days. And like, you're not living in a hotel. You're like, most people are in a tent and, they're breathing smoke in the smoke all day long, all night long. It's like hot, dirty. And usually like people would get maybe 1 or 2 deployments a year for events. But this year I know people that are on their 7th deployment. Ooh. And so it's not only hard on them, but it's hard on their families, right? So like, for kids that, dads and moms that have young kids at home, it's a long time away from them. You only have so many summers when your kids are little. And then they would only get, between their deployments, maybe like, it depends on the province, but like 3 to 7 days or something like that to kind of reset. So it's very draining. And I think that that's why has pushed me even more towards this like good fire idea and like this active forest management. Because I think that like, our firefighters are heroes, but it's just a lot on them and like they don't need to be experiencing this. And we've also had firefighter deaths this year in Canada, multiple deaths. And so it's just to me, like people shouldn't have to be like risking their lives against wildfires. And obviously we've had some of the worst outcomes here. And I'm hoping that, by using good fire on the ground, reducing risk and other things like that, it will help make things safer for those firefighters when they're going out and doing their jobs. Yeah.
We just got to stop with the fear and embrace the possibility, right? Like it's totally possible. And I think it'd be great to see more good fire in the ground and see more opportunity that way, because there's so many different ways to reduce fire hazard, and it's just about trust, and it's about letting go of this colonial mindset of centralized system decision making, right? So it's I think it would be really, really cool. So I think to give context to it, do you know offhand the total hectares burned this year in Canada?
No, I don't actually. I'm assuming maybe you can Google it while we're talking, look on the CIFC webpage there. But I think, the last I saw was like 1.6 million hectares or something, but that was a while ago. Honestly, I just know it's bad. So I haven't been keeping too much track of the numbers. I know we've had an unprecedented number of evacuees. And what's really been interesting to me too is like, one of my colleagues, Dan Thompson, who's a researcher with the Canadian Forest Service, him and I just presented at this conference in Washington, D.C. on greenhouse gas emissions. And one of the points that Dan brought up was that this summer in Canada, like every day, there was between 1,000 to 3,000 kilometers of new fire perimeter each day. Oof. So like, the scale of that is just because I know at first, like when Quebec was having their fires, people in the States were like, just put them out. Like, we're eating all your smoke down here. Like, what are you guys doing up there? But people don't understand like the scale of the fires up here. Like, you can't just like how many firefighters would that take to control 3,000 kilometers in planes and like all of this? And that's just in a day, right? So it's an extremely, and another thing too that I really saw was in the media, there was so much talk about, what's causing this. And, a big point to climate change, which I mean is totally true. Obviously, climate change is like changing our weather, lengthening fire seasons, causing more lightnings. Like there's tons of good science behind that, causing drought. But I think like some point, and I would say too, like people always say to me like, well, why don't you talk about reducing emissions? Like you're just talking about burning more. And it's like, well, obviously we need to reduce emissions, right? Like
that's not what this podcast is about.
I know, but it's like, yes, 100%. Like I'm all for transitioning like to a just transition to a green economy, all of that. 100% we need to do that and try and reduce like the impact of climate change. But at the same time, it's not only climate change that's got us in this boat, right? It's years of forest mismanagement, years of, fire exclusion from forests that need fire. There's just so many factors, like, people moving into the wildland urban interface that don't, know about fire or building in extremely risky places. Like, we can just go on and on about all the different factors that have led to this issue. And so I think too, like we obviously can't, like Bob Gray always says, like we can't change the weather, and we can't change the climate at the moment, but there are things that we can do. And one of those is changing the fuel that's available to burn. And so the vegetation that you can burn. And so that one of the ways to do that is through good fire, obviously.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I looked it up.
Okay. How many? What are we at?
15.2 million hectares in Canada this year is burnt.
15.2. Wow, my 1.6 was obviously a while ago.
I think you know what your 1.6 was?
Yeah.
That was Alberta alone.
Alberta alone. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. So 15.2 million hectares is what is burnt. So the second highest recorded was in 1995 with 7.1 million. So we've more than doubled.
So doubled, yeah.
Yeah. And then so crazy. Just yeah.
Yeah. And I want to say the one thing before too is that people always talk about like before like Canada was colonized, there were much more frequent fires and other things. But like what we can tell from tree rings is that they weren't on this scale or at this intensity and severity. Like the reason why we have tree rings is because those trees were able to survive the fire. But what we're seeing right now is that the fire severity and intensity in some places is so high, it's decimating. Like, there's not a living standing tree left that you could then go and do like a tree ring study on. So, I think that for me, that's been like just one important thing to point out is that like the scale of fires, but also how the fires are burning is just so different.
Yeah. So the severity, the frequency, and what's the third one?
Yeah, intensity.
Intensity. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember the intensity. But
basically, the fire behavior is just severe, right? That's happening in these areas, and it's like there was a video on social media that came out of like one of the fire tornadoes along the lakeside.
Yes.
And, there's been all sorts of things, and so I think for me, like honestly, I've spent a lot of the season depressed, right? Because it's like in 2017, I was doing media too, and it was lots of the same questions. And like, you know, at that time, we had a bunch of interest shifted towards good fire, but it's been hard. And so my family's territory too, so around the Fort McMurray area, was impacted by fires this year, and Wood Buffalo National Park and other areas have just seen unprecedented fires. And so in the 1970s, a researcher named Henry Lewis went up there, and he did interviews with Dene elders and Cree elders, Métis elders in that area about fire and how to use fire. And they were talking about like the meadow burning they did, how they would make pathways for bison, like all these different things that would reduce the fire risk, like the importance of beaver on the landscape. You know, because beaver create like little moist pockets all over the landscape that can help to slow a fire spread too. But so for me, the big trauma this year, honestly, has just been like, what could have been? Like, you know, if we would have listened to those elders, like, would we see what we're seeing right now? And so for Indigenous communities, it's like a complete decimation of their way of life around their community. Like, I spent time up this summer on deployment at Pasqua Base, but it was Little Red River Cree Nation that had been impacted by the fires. And so the community of Fox Lake had multiple structures burned. But what was also struck me about it up there was just how the landscape around their community had changed so much. So like the ability to go out and carry out your culture around your community is going to be changed for generations up there. And then the firefighting efforts too, right? Like the dozer guards, and there the peat is like in some places 2 meters deep. And so for people that don't know, the fire gets into that peat. So it's like basically like a soil layer on top of like the mineral soil, and it burns through that, and it'll just sit at the bottom of the peat and burn for months or years. And so when they're firefighting, they basically have to doze that and rip it all back. So they had cleared up their football fields of peat, like stripped it off, and they do go and try and reclaim, you know, areas, but obviously it's not the same as like an undisturbed forest. So yeah, for me, that's been like just a real thing. But then Elder Joe Gilchrist, who's been on the podcast before, I was talking to him, and he was saying, like, you know, the one good thing about it that we can think about is this is a good opportunity for a reset, right? Because many of those forests were so overgrown that we wouldn't have been able to go into them and use cultural fire on the ground in a safe way. But now that the forests have kind of, you know, been burned and decimated in some areas, you know, now we can go in, right, in good ways and kind of keep maintenance of those meadows and other things, and go back to the fire intervals that we want to see on the landscape of good fire.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like, just providing the opportunity to actually like get back to that cultural landscape of burning regularly and not worried about the massive 120 years of fuel buildup that needed fire and never got it. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Yeah, no, it's a weird time to say the least, for sure. I mean, 15.2 million hectares is like, this is crazy. Obviously for you, a lot of this is very personal, right? And I think getting into the personal aspect of it for the folks that are dealing with the impacts of these forest fires, like you said, like up in Little Red River and other places. Yeah, you maybe you want to break down how they've been impacted and how their lives have changed as a result of these massive fires.
Yeah, so I mean, Fox Lake is a community of Little Red River Cree Nation, and the location is interesting because their community is across the Peace River from, the main road. So to actually get into their community, you require to go on a barge. There's no bridge or anything like that. And there are about over 3,000 people living on the other side of the river. So not only when the evacuation happened was it incredibly scary because, you know, and the barge is not a huge barge. Like we're talking like 2 trucks. So they have like a few barges like that. And so I know but for me, what's been really amazing about that is just how the chief and council up there have stood up, and the community members too, and really responded in I'd say like in a very thoughtful way to like what the community is experiencing, how to rebuild and how to do things. And they've been really pressuring for like, you know, a much larger barge to their community, you know, homes to be built. How can they get on the ground as fast as they can? How can they support community members? How can they return in a good way to their communities? So, I mean, there is positives about that. But another thing too up there is that their store burned, right? Their northern store where people would go so they didn't have to go on the barge and cross the river, right? And so that's another thing, right? Like there goes like if you need a loaf of bread or some milk, like, you know, you have to drive into High Level, which is like over an hour away from the community, or if you want to go to a bigger center. So yeah, really, like it's weird because I always get that on things like maybe I'm too optimistic, but like, you know, completely saddened by what happened up there, but then also just like the resiliency of the community. But then it always makes me mad too because I'm like, we shouldn't have to be resilient. Like, you know, that's like a forced thing, right? Like people should just be able to be without experiencing constant events that cause them to have to be resilient all the time. So yeah. But anyways, hoping the best for that community as they get back in there and, you know, kind of rebuild their community. I think that things are being done in a really good way there. So excited to see how the progress goes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I can't imagine being in that situation where, like, for everybody just to have a thought experiment, right? Just imagine that you're in a community that has one way in, one way out, and it's a barge that can hold 2 trucks. So you have to evacuate. How long does that take? And there's the you know, the sky overhead is blotted out. It's basically midnight. It looks like midnight, but it's the middle of the day. There's embers flying on you. You don't know if your house is going to survive. You don't know if you're going to survive. And to have to deal with that evacuation procedure and to try to protect your community without the resources and access to a highway that can easily bring those resources, right? Like it's just, it requires an incredibly resilient people to be able to just mentally manage that situation, let alone actually come out on top. Yeah. So no, incredible. Absolutely. Yeah.
And you've got like kids and elders there. And I mean, the community does have an airstrip that I think like a lot of government folks kind of, you know, parachute in and out on. But yeah, I know, like, you know, when the fire's threatening, right? It's not like how do you evacuate 3,000 people even by plane, right? It's quite an effort. And so I know that like other, like Garden River is another one of their communities, people there really stepped up and were driving boats down the river to come help. And like for people too that don't know the scale of the Peace River, like it's a massive river, like to get across. So it's not, it's not like just a hot, or you could drive your truck through it.
It's not a creek. Like, no.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's like the situation I think that's important to note that we've seen across Canada. So there's been multiple communities like that. And again, a lot of Indigenous communities impacted as well. And so like, I saw like stats about like the Northwest Territories and how many people up there were evacuated. Like I think it was 20% of their entire population of their territory was under evacuation order. So just very large impacts there.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, disproportionately impacted by the fires. Yeah, Indigenous communities are for sure. So this next season of Good Fire, so you're going to focus on matriarchs, you're going to focus on women's voices and that kind of thing. Do you have any further information that you want to give out? Any more information regarding this next season, who you're going to talk to, what kind of discussions we're going to be having, just to kind of tease out those episodes that will be coming whenever they're coming?
Yeah. Well, like obviously I should say, so the one person I really want to have is Vicky Preston from Creek Tribe. And so I'll put that out there on this podcast so that she has to come. I know we've talked about it, but honestly, we've both just been so busy and her community is impacted by fire right now. And it's just been a crazy year for them. But yeah, I'd love to have Vicky. And so for folks that are looking for some more Good Fire content to listen to, Vicky has a podcast called the Intentional Fire Podcast. I think I've mentioned it maybe before on here, but definitely give that one a listen. It's a great kind of like local example of Good Fire. So Vicky talks to people from her nation about how they're using Good Fire and the applications and other things. So yeah, I definitely recommend that. And yeah, I have some other ideas for guests, just again, huge like leaders in fire that are, yeah, and I think lots of the inspiration obviously came from that Karuk, where, you know, that women's treks where they just got together, like, you know, women who are just leading in their communities in multiple ways. So,
no, that's awesome. I'm excited to listen to it. I'm excited to be a part of it. It's gonna be great. It's always interesting for me to be a part of these things because it definitely helps me to step out of my perspective and into someone else's in a good way, and I like it. It helps to balance my opinions, I find.
Yeah.
So
well, and I think too, one thing like I heard a lot was like, I think that, you know, Indigenous knowledge and other things are being accepted so much more, and people are talking about it all the time. You know, we need to integrate this. We need to learn from Indigenous people. We need like them to teach us, or we need partnering with Indigenous communities. But the thing I've been really trying to push lately is that, you know, maybe, although yes, it is, but this is an area where we need Indigenous leadership, right? So we shouldn't always have to be going and teaching agencies and other people who then go and do on our behalf, right? It should really just be a recognition that there is expertise and knowledge that exists in our communities, in, you know, our Indigenous knowledge keepers, and that they should be, you know, it's crazy to me because they shouldn't even have to be given permission to go in and do this work because of their like sovereignty and autonomy over their territories. But that's kind of where we are right now. And so for me, that's where I would like to see progress, is not just so much in the recognition or braiding or integration, but like, how are we putting Indigenous people on the land to do this work? And so again, I'll talk about like some elders I work with, like they're called on by agencies to go and train people in good fire who then go out and use good fire in their prescribed fire applications. But then that same elder who's teaching isn't allowed to go and light a match.
Yeah, like what
so
the hell?
It's just, it's just like the system is kind of crazy right now. And, you know, people always say, oh, there's so many policies and regulations. Like people wrote those policies. We can change them. Like, you know what I mean? Like laws can be changed, other things. If things aren't working for the safety and security of Canadians, like let's re-examine those and change them.
They literally change all the time. Like that excuse is so lazy. You're just like, well, it's really hard. You're like, but they happen all the time. When enough people give a shit, like maybe you guys should give a shit. Like,
yeah. Well, that's one thing about the smoke, right? So like for flooding's such a localized event, but for wildfire, like obviously the smoke has impacted multiple urban centers where multiple politicians live. So it will be very interesting to see like, you know, what kind of comes out of it this year. Cause I mean, smoke is incredibly hazardous too for people to be breathing all summer.
Oh yeah, there was one thing that I read. It was like the amount of smoke you have on like a severity 12 day. I think 12 is the highest number you can get on the air quality rating or whatever, right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think if you're breathing that all day long, it's the equivalent of like 15 packs of cigarettes or something. And I'm like, damn, that's abundant. That's a lot.
I know. I saw lots of people like jogging and stuff, like, you know, people who obviously care about their physical health, and like this crazy smoke. I was like, maybe you should stay home and like do some push-ups in air conditioning. That'd probably be a better strategy for your health.
Yeah, no, totally. I was shaking my head at the same time. People running stairs in that smoke. I'm like, you're doing the opposite of what you're trying to do right now. This is not good. It's terrible.
I mean, and we don't need to live like that. I think that's the one thing like I want to push. Like there are other ways that we can do things, even in an era of climate change, right? Indigenous people, our knowledge adapts to all sorts of different situations. So like, let's see what we can do to improve this.
Absolutely. I'm excited. Season 3 coming up. What do you want to end it with?
Someday. One day.
Someday. Yeah, we'll see. It's coming though. We're working on it. So, that's all we got for a little teaser episode that we threw together last minute to just get to talking and
you're not supposed to say that part.
Well, no, it's fine. It's fine. It is.
It's honest,
no one's paying for this one. This one's just a freebie. It's all good.
Yeah. Does anyone want to sponsor us? No, just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, thanks, Amy. And, yeah, I guess we'll probably end up doing another one of these at some point when we do know when it's coming out. That'll be the next teaser, which will be, who knows when, but it'll be sometime.
Yeah, hopefully soon.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and I hope you get pumped up for another season. And go ahead and listen to the last 2 seasons again. You know, it doesn't hurt to brush up and freshen up your knowledge. And yeah, those were excellent. So we'll see you all when we see you. A huge thank you to Canada Wildfire for their support of this podcast. As well, we would like to thank the Fighting Gunditjmara for allowing us to share their fire song Ween as the official song of Good Fire Podcast.